Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to see you here today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching How to Rock Astrology. Today we are going to have a little discussion. This is kind of like an intro video, talking about the nature of the nodes. In Western astrology, we call them the North Node and the South Node. They're also called the Ascending Node and Descending Node. Vedic astrology has used for aeons the particular terms Rahu and Ketu to describe Rahu being the north ascending node, Ketu being the southern descending node of the moon. We're going to talk a little bit about the astronomy of this. Today I'm basically giving like a little breakdown of notes that I took regarding these two shadow planets. They're not necessarily grahas, they're not planets per se, they're actual mathematical points. We're going to talk about these points, what they are, what they mean, as has been given by my teacher, Ryan Kurczak, through Asheville Astrology's apprenticeship program. Now, this presentation is my own. I'm not doing this officially for Asheville Astrology, but I am using the knowledge that I've gained from that class, as well as trying to throw my own spin on it as well. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome. Now, I figured I would just kind of get right into this. As I said, these are notes, so I'm going to be looking down at my computer and trying to speak to these notes to you as we go along. Now, first thing to be said, Rahu and Ketu are not luminaries. They do not carry light or power from the sun or to the sun, like in and of themselves. They aren't planets. They don't necessarily look at other planets, so they don't give aspects per se, although some people would debate that. They're shadow planets, often relating to spirits because they have to work through a body, meaning they need to work through some part of the energy field given by the Rashi and the Lord of the Rashi that it's placed in. Wherever Rahu is in your chart, it needs to use the house, whatever house cusps fall into that house, and the Lord of that house, whatever the dispositor is, in order to express what Rahu essentially is and means universally as well as for that individual. They need planets to work through, whether that means the planet ruling its sign or one that it's associated with, conjunct, in the same sign with. Now, in order to really define, later in this schema, I'm going to talk about how this is pretty far in the Asheville Astrology Apprenticeship program. We will have built upon a whole bunch of things before getting to Rahu and Ketu. And this includes knowing about the Rashis, the signs, knowing about the bhavas, knowing about the nature of the grahas, knowing about the nature of graha aspects, mathematical yogas that Rahu's lord might be involved in. Lajatadi of Vashtas is always a huge critical thing that I'm trying to explain to people. It's different from graha aspects. It's a whole different thing. It has to do with the relationships of the planets intrinsically to the interactions. Lajatadi of Vashtas are the interactions of one planet to another in relation to their permanent relationships. For example, if the sun is conjunct Venus, they are never good friends, either of them. They're enemies to each other. And so that is a debilitating figure for both of them. If the sun is in Libra, this is also bad because Libra is ruled by Venus and is an enemy to the sun. That's considered a Lajatadi Avashta, where the sun's getting starved. It's a huge factor. If you're interested, I recommend looking up Ernst Wilhelm's free online article about the Lajatadi Avashtas. Ernst Wilhelm says that it's like a huge, it's like the crown of planetary qualification when interpreting a horoscope. So, we need all of these things previous, like in Asheville's apprenticeship, We learn all this stuff, and then we get to Rahu and Ketu, because you need all of that stuff to configure Rahu and Ketu, because the nodes express themselves through the Rashi that they're in. And whatever planets are there, whatever is an aspect, and whatever is the lord of that sign. It's as if there's an outside quality or force hijacking everything we learned would have happened in that sign or the house that Rahu or Ketu is in. Excuse me. It's like a karmic pressure, a karmic force. Things seem to be coming from the outside that are zeroing in on us at the most critically stopping junction. The most powerful thing that can stop our consciousness in a lot of ways, or at least obstruct it and give us a clue to the way of our own path to expressing the sun and the moon. Rahu and Ketu, they make the obstructions, but by being the obstruction, they're also the solution to the obstruction. In a funny sort of way. It's almost like Rahu and Ketu are kind of like a cigarette. They're often defined as smoke. Ketu is a very smoky considered planet. And this is a funny, I don't advocate smoking tobacco or cigarettes in particular, but when you smoke a cigarette, it's like you're relieving a tension that you put on yourself. It's like, you smoke some cigarettes and you get addicted to the sensation, and then you stop, and then your body says, hey, I'm used to using that to go forward. That's like the Ketu aspect of this. And so it's the addiction that brings the Ketu, and then Rahu says, I gotta find some way to do this, and then Ketu is kind of like using the cigarette, smoking the cigarette, getting the same old sensation that you're used to. You're used to having this tension, and then something to release it, the same old thing. Rahu is kind of like when you get like a lung problem where you start coughing and you start hacking up venom and toxins. What happens is that this is you going so much into Ketu that it's kind of like the reality sunks back, it flings back at you for how long you've been stuck to this stagnant paradigm. It's like the cigarettes are not really satisfying. They do pull you forward, though. The feeling Ketu does draw you forward, and it's important to have a good Ketu. This is one of the huge lessons that I'm going to be trying to express throughout this whole series. Is that Ketu is much more important than we give it credence, although it's a necessary evil, just like cigarettes are for a lot of people. But the idea is that Rahu is going to make you hack up some phlegm, and if you have a good Rahu, you're going to be able to say, wow, that was gross. I should change the way I've been keeping myself up. Now what you do from there is that you take the Ketu energy, and you want to keep that capacity to be moving forward. I got to go forward. I need something, and something's going to draw me ahead. It's the Rahu in us that allows us to transform the impulse of Ketu towards new territory, to make this karmic samskara of Ketu, this desirousness of Ketu, to transmute it so that it can be the same impulses used, but towards more gratifying means, towards more gratifying ends, more expansive ends. And it also ultimately takes that energy of that delicious cigarette lust, and it turns it into inspiration. There's a challenge for ourselves that's pushed. It's like paper, a piece of paper sliding under a door. Like it just shunk, like the Rahu in us is just made, our whole selves are made to employ that which Rahu is drawing out of us. I mean, mind you, Ryan makes a point in his thing that it's not as all-encompassing as a lot of people make it out to be, unless it's, by my derivation, unless it is like involved with a significant point in the chart, which could be a lot of different things. If it's like in your 10th house or conjunct your MC, heaven, if it's conjunct your ascendant or your ascendant lord, or any angular cusp, really. If it's in a trinal house, it's with a Jimini Karaka, so like your Atma Karaka, right? Or if it's in the sign of your Atma Karaka. For example, my Atma Karaka is Venus. So if I had Rahu in Taurus or Libra, this would deeply enrich my life experience with the themes and tones of Rahu. It's important for everybody, and it's ultimately going to give everybody what they need in life. A lot of what they need in order to keep expanding and keep moving forward. But in between all of that, the whole vehicle for all of that involves the will of the sun and the moon constantly refurbishing themselves, as well as, you know, Rahu and Ketu together in a way that a lot of people don't understand. Plus also the help of Mars supporting Ketu and Saturn supporting the agenda of Rahu. These are things that we're going to talk about it in our next video. I've made this video describing how Ketu and Mars are one pocket, and then Rahu and Saturn are another pocket. I've made a metaphor for it. It's as a movie production team. You'll be able to see it in one of our next videos coming up. But I do digress. So Shadbala, the yoga strengths, Lajatati Avashas, aspects, angles, all of these determine what toolbox the strength and weakness that Rahu and Ketu have to work with. The Lord, the sign, and the things involved with Rahu and Ketu. So just for a little bit of astronomical context, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's not my expertise. I'm really more into the poetry. I'm really into reading Vedic Sanskrit texts from people who have said that this is the important thing. I try to look through scripture to see what cream has been brought to the top from the runny milk of all possible astrological things and methods. I like to take what has been said, are the most important ones and best ones, and just use them. That's kind of how I roll with guru lineage type things, just like a lot of us do. But I do recommend, Ryan does give a little astronomical bid here, and it's important for anybody to learn that. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. It doesn't look like I have it right here right away. First thing I'll say, Rahu and Ketu are points in space where eclipses occur in the year. There's a descent. It's kind of like every year there is this thing that's happening where, if I understand it correctly, the moon, as it's rotating around like Earth, right? That's the moon going around the Earth. It starts to take on an angular thing. So now if you can, hopefully I'm making this seem okay. Now you can see that the moon is definitely almost vertical. And when it's coming, let's say this is in like May, and the moon crosses the vertical plane of the sun, because the sun is just going a standard circular motion like this. Gosh, I wish I could. Let's see what we can do. This is the sun. This is the plane of the sun. So the sun gets a very concise flat plane, and the Earth goes around the sun. You're going to see a picture. I'm going to show you a picture. Earth goes around the sun, and because of that, the sun seems to be on a singular plane. It's actually slightly, if you can see, it's slightly tilted on its axis. But this is the Earth going around the sun in a flat disk. Now we take the moon, and it starts off going like this, but throughout the year it eventually kind of goes like vertical. And it's at that part of the year where the moon and the sun, the moon is coming up on this vertical axis, moving up towards ascending. So it's like it's going sideways month after month after month. As soon as it reaches up and starts to go ahead, that is the breach into Rahu. And then at the next half of the year, it reaches down so that it's moving ahead, and instead of going like this, it kind of like comes around like this. Oh gosh, I can't even do it. Eventually it flattens out again. But you're going to see a picture of what I'm talking about. And essentially this plane going from sideways to vertical and then back to sideways again is the points where the nodes occur. There's a lot of astronomical wisdom in that, but again, this isn't my expertise, but I want to at least speak to it. When an eclipse occurs, the sun and the moon are lining up in a way with the earth that interferes with either the sun's light coming towards earth, it's when the moon obstructs the sun, or when earth is getting in between the sun and the moon, and the earth casts a shadow on the light of the moon. Full moon is the solar eclipse, new moon is the lunar eclipse. Now I just want to show you guys just this picture, just to kind of round out this astronomical inquiry. So you can see that there's a red band here. The sun in this picture is actually supposed to be, that little sun in the middle there, that's actually the earth. The red band is the path of the moon, going around the earth, tilting up and down, not always at this angle. It's a varying angle. We see that the moon's path is above the earth in the northern hemisphere. It descends down to cross the path of the sun, the descending node, and this creates Ketu. It can make a difference at what point is in relationship to the ascension and descension, meaning where Rahu is has this karmic draw towards it that's like inspiring but also hard. You know, so this is a picture of what the nodes basically kind of look like in an astronomical sense. I'm sure somebody more astronomically profound could probably bring out more rich wisdom with regards to that picture. For now, I'm just going to try to explain what I can in terms of the astrology of this situation. So there's a myth and legend of Rahu and Ketu. It's the mythos of a demon, an asura, that was called Svarbhanu. It's an avatar of Vishnu, Varaha. Svarbhanu is the incarnation of Varaha, which nobody knows in the Vedic story. All of the people around just think that Svarbhanu is just another lizardy, lusty demon. Before the whole spinning of the ocean of milk, if you've ever heard that Vedic story, before that happened, there's an even earlier story where there was a boar named Varaha, and it had divine consciousness, and it represents Rahu. Rahu is considered to be the divine consciousness as part of the divine singularity of Vishnu, and it doesn't necessarily, it is technically divine. It doesn't have any necessarily human limitation on it, but we as humans need to be able to channel that potentiality constructively. And if Rahu does not have the tools, a good sign lord, with which to constructively express its inherent formless infinite potentials of Vishnu, then it's going to mess things up, and it's actually going to be a dark force that's just doesn't, it's like, I want to express so much, and it's like trying to fit a cylinder into a star-shaped hole. All you're going to do is destroy the thing. And Rahu does that for a lot of people. This boar, Varaha, was in the ocean of dissolved consciousness of Vishnu. And at some point, the boar felt like there was a glory, a Christ consciousness, a game that's worth the candle, a 2 that comes out of a 1. It's like I'm trying to think cosmic, it's really psychedelically here about what Christ consciousness is, about what Vishnu is, which is a sum which is greater than its parts. There was nothing, and out of this nothingness, the universe said, I want there to be more than just this pure potentiality. The universe didn't say this per se. It's just that we know that this exists because we aren't just existing in pure potentiality, or else we wouldn't be talking about this. I'm here, you're listening to me, and we're talking about stuff that's not nothing, because we're not nothing. Or something. Cosmic funny humor there. And since this is the case, we know that the universe did conspire to move. There are some who would argue that the universe is getting worse. It's not like it's, you know, maybe it goes in cycles of like, okay, I'm going to divide myself and become less. I'm going to spill some pearls into, put my pearls in front of swine, and sometimes the universe is not a great place and it doesn't make things better. But Rahu's intention and purpose as this boar coming out of the ocean said there is a way. If I become form, if I desire to have form, to express something, and it will reflect glory by what I can do with it from there. The universe had the chance to either exist in pure potentiality or to have consciousness, which takes on the responsibility to fix memory, genetic memory, and use it constructively. And that's what the universe did. It said, it's a tough challenge for the universe, but I'm not just going to do nothing, because the universe doesn't just do nothing, or else we wouldn't be talking about it. The legacy of the nodes indicates our birthing into experience is the reason of Rahu and this demon. Earth is required in order for the soul to have experience. Our soul, the soul of the universe through which we are realized and born. It's a transcendental, timeless soul tantra. The Shakti of this Viraha has to be with this earth goddess. Viraha does what it does. It becomes this earthy boar through the Shakti, through the earthy power of an earth goddess, of earth. We need that desire, that compulsion, that obsession for one particular form. And when we come out into our reality and into our incarnation, we desire to express some kind of form. And it's tough, because the earth is where desires take shape so that you can work out those desires. Manifest as much as that desire as you need to, as is proper, basically through the power of the sign and lord of Rahu. It's going to express what is there. And that is our desires taking shape so that we can work them out. Not just with Rahu, mind you, but that's also with Ketu. Ketu is the expression of the desire. Rahu is working it out. Carl Sagan has a funny phrase here where he says, before you can bake an apple pie, you have to invent the universe. Vis-a-vis, in order to unclench the potential desirousness of the soul, you must experience the field of reality and consciousness. Deal with form without being attached to it. Let the thunder roll through you, and your desire to express in form will find a positive channel and will increase just abundance if you allow all of your things in your chart to express themselves at their basic nature. Because that way the water, it's like there's no friction against the air. When you express your karmas positively, it's like a Ferrari driving down the highway. It's aerodynamic. It's zoom, it goes right down there. Whereas if you have like a square on the highway with like an engine, and the engine is just, or a cube, the cube has no aerodynamic. It's not smooth. The friction of the air hits the flat face of the box as you're trying to push it down the highway, and that's ill karma. You're using all this power in the engine and it's not effective. That's like having an ill-placed Rahu or Ketu or everything else in our charts. So I don't want to get, I'm giving you guys a real cosmic spiel here, but I guess Rahu and Ketu kind of bring that out. Rahu and Ketu provide the blessing of experience and the reason for being here, although it comes at the price of some kind of attachment. Ironically, Ketu is this burning of those attachments. Whatever Rahu has been, Ketu becomes. Whenever you conquer this new territory, it becomes old territory. That next thing you want to do is go through it. So Ketu is is kind of like an attachment to some kind of form. But by burning out Ketu at his best lets you burn out those old karmas so that you're not as attached to them anymore. They've gotten their use, and you can keep moving forward with new forms of Ketu through the insight of what Rahu forces you into. So this is kind of what it's all about here, folks. Earth is our body. We are made of earth. The ascendant point represents the earth in astrology. So everything else is affecting the ascendant. That's our life path. The sun path marks out and delineates and gives rise to our karmas. It gives the zodiac and the rashis. And the light of the sun and interaction of planetary rays intermingling with the earth gives us the birth chart and that we ascribe to planets and the rashis. So this is, anyway, I guess I wanted to show this cool little picturino here. This is just a little glimpse at this Varaha character. Varaha rescues the goddess of the earth from these waters of cosmic dissolution. And this is this big boar dude who's got this earthy goddess, which is our expressed desires and dreams and things that we want to manifest. So, just a few more things I want to say about these planets, just to kind of ring all this in. The great incarnations, Ram, Krishna, Narasimha, and Varaha, are holy with Paramatman, meaning this is the divine conscious thing. The sun, the moon, Mars, and Rahu are the only four who are ascribed to this very important divine consciousness. Even Mars, with all its malefic brutishness as we ascribe to it, can actually be quite noble and represents some of the most pure potentials and intentions in the spirit. So, despite the demonic reference, the wholeness of Rahu possesses divine consciousness. Other incarnations have in them Jivans too, which is a human level of consciousness, which is important, of course, again, or else we wouldn't be here. But Rahu, Sun, Moon, and Mars are always pulling us to squeeze whatever energy field is maintained by Ketu, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, all the other planets. These are kind of maintaining necessary aspects of our energy field. And it's the Sun, the Moon, Mars, and Rahu that squeezes the cheesecloth and gets the richest cream out of the runny milk of what karmas there are in your soul. They push us there, especially if they're well placed and they're in good flow between each other. The Sun and Moon are royal. Mars is the army chief. Prince is Mercury. The ministers are Jupiter and Venus. Saturn is a servant, which becomes important for Rahu. And Rahu and Ketu are the planetary army. Ketu stays home and protects. Rahu goes out in the wilds into uncharted territories and conquers them. And this is usually through a willful outer force that forces it. Like I said, it's just like your lungs get caked with that cigarette resin, and then you just gotta, it's just time has just splintered all of your negative stagnants from doing the same thing over and over from past lives from Ketu. It just makes you have to go in a new direction that's tough, that can be very hard. The trick is here, we're going to talk about how if you have a good Saturn, it won't scare you away from what Rahu represents. A good Saturn can says, okay, now it's time for me to spit out this crap in my lungs. Very good, I was waiting for this. And you just spit, and a good Saturn will stand there. I'm not doing anything until I figure this out. Spits out the resin or the venom or the junk, And then Saturn says, that's what happens when you smoke cigarettes. Oh well, no big deal. Maybe I should find, that wasn't that crazy. Maybe I can take this energy and find a better way to discipline myself with it, because I'm not afraid of the energy. If Saturn is good, it will not be afraid of the venomous spike that Rahu erupts. And that's a huge part of the trick. If Rahu is not strong, then you might just hold all that cigarette resin in your lungs and not really cough it up and not have the sense that you need to transform. But that venom and that toxin will still build up. It's the problem with having a bad Rahu. You might think, oh, so I don't have the channel for Rahu, so I don't really need to deal with it. It's still going to come through. You're just not going to be consciously on top of it, and that's never a good thing. So if you got a weak Rahu, just look at where it is in your chart. Do whatever you can to use all the materials, all the planet aspects that you can to sort of splay it out, to express it, to find ways to have some kind of transformative, tough, kundalini, yoga-like energy that gives your system a jarring feeling. And you might be able to inflict it on yourself. Might need a good Saturn to do that, but I digress. So, Mars. So Saturn is important for Rahu. Where does Mars come into the mix for Ketu? Well, let's see how we would say it. Ketu is the cigarette smoking thing. Basically, Mars is your capacity to have a life, to kind of have energy going out, being pressed out there, so that the cigarette energy that you're taking in is not like wasted. It's like you got to lean on Ketu. You got to lean on whatever's come from back there. But you want to take that energy and use it skillfully, so it's not wasteful. And that's what Mars invokes. Mars is the army chief. Mars is the commander of Rahu and Ketu's army. Mars is the army chief, and Rahu and Ketu together are the planetary army. Remember, Rahu is the part of the army that conquers out. Ketu is the part of the army that protects. Now, if you want to know how well Rahu and Ketu express their agendas, how well they learn from the past, and whether Rahu indeed will be victorious in bringing experiences that the sun inspires to achieve. Mars is a huge part of that. I mean, Mars is like the second-hand man for the sun, which is really the deep inspirational mode and nature of the chart. It's Rahu that kind of seeks to... It's just like an unconscious principle that just time, data, algorithms is this collected venom from everything else that you're doing in your life. But Rahu just happens to be what's best for you. I mean, like I said, you know, you've got to spit out that venom, and once you realize the cigarette is hurting you, you've got to think in your head, I got to find a better way to channel this energy. And if you have a good sun, whatever Rahu decides, whatever Rahu pushes you towards, it is going to have something to do with what your sun is. Especially if they're well placed to each other. It's going to reflect that your sun is still holding reign over the inspiration and meaning of all the figures in your chart, even though Rahu has got to go explore this territory. It's like a king. It's a king. The king, his main intention is to rule well, to expand its what would you call it? To expand its empire, to expand its energy field, to embody the potentials of the spirit and all, and the glory and whatever it is that the sun does. And Rahu is this necessary fate fixture that forces us to transform anyway. The idea is that if you've got a good Rahu, and especially a good sun, then wherever Rahu has to get the best sense of itself, it will still allow, the sun will take the space it needs to also keep being the kingdom, while Rahu goes and expands the army. You know, what's the point of going and expanding the army into new territory if that territory doesn't relate to the nature of the king, of the sun? You know, like, let's say, gosh, like if you have a certain people with a certain culture who I could think of it lots of different ways, but like, I mean, like what I'm thinking of like is if you're the sun, you're a king, and you suddenly realize that there's a place that you need to go explore because you've lost a certain type of food, or you're running low on food in your country, your kingdom. So you go out to try and find new land, new territory. But if you find a territory that is useless, or maybe it's already got all the foods that you have, and it doesn't have the certain thing that you need, like whether it's like water or something, you know. It's like if your country needs water, Rahu goes out to expand and explore and find water, and finds all sorts of different things. If you don't have a good sun, then you might not find the thing that the kingdom is really all about. So this is just me kind of thinking out loud sort of deal. So, the state of Mars within our birth chart is one of the primary keys as the kind of the interloper between the king and Rahu and Ketu, who are this desirous energy who go out and do their thing. Mars is your ability to get money or whatever materials, or to push to get the pack of cigarettes, to get whatever Ketu is keeping you along, right? Sorry to use this cigarette metaphor. I know it's kind of dirty, but I think it is relevant to Rahu and Ketu because they are smoky and they're about toxins and drugs and these sorts of things. It's not to say you need to use drugs to make the best of them, but they represent this type of impulse in human consciousness, and you just got to transmute it. So imagine if Mars, as the army chief, if it's got bad dignity, if it's got low shad bala, it's in low dig bala, if it's got lots of negative avashtas and lajatati avashtas hitting it. If Mars is bad, that's like a general of army who thinks about sex all day and drinks himself into a stupor. And thus, when it comes time to give orders or to control and rigidly express the army, he just can't do it. He doesn't have the aggression, he doesn't have the self-confidence, and the Mars just doesn't have the sense to perpetuate and to get the most out of this energy that's coming from Ketu. The strength, power, and position of Mars give insight into whether Rahu and Ketu will be manageable, or whether they'll run rampart with their chaotic implications when they're not controlled by Mars. Mars is kind of this ability. Mars is kind of like Ketu draws us forth again. It's an energy that pulls us, gets us through. It's Mars that kind of says, I only need this much of this cigarette to function at my best. If you have a really good Mars, then it's like, I only need a little bit of this Ketu. Even if your Ketu is really ill-placed, it's going to be hard for your Mars because it's not going to have the materials or resources or connections to bring out the best of Mars's potentials. Mars is the one who says, you know what, I only need like one cigarette today, and I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to get the best out of that. And eventually someday I might not even need these cigarettes, you know? I mean, like, ideally, the energy of Ketu will still be there, the desirous, lusty nature, even if you don't smoke cigarettes anymore. It's Mars that's going to take this lusty energy of Ketu and is going to say, I need to take this energy and fortify myself in my energy field somehow. So this goes to show why Rahu and Mars are both deeply important. Ketu gives us the ability to learn through inference. A really good metaphor here is that if you've been in a country and you have to learn the customs of the country, Rahu is good at just dealing with whatever customs are in the moment in order to get what it needs to get done. Ketu is important, though. Ketu isn't just your attachment to your old ways, to your old country. What it's really about, Ketu, is the feeling, the connection of the self that you've been with and all the usefulness of all that you've been in the past, in order to develop on a solid platform a personality that can understand universally how the self expresses most constructively in the world. To take this metaphor, it's like if you're out in a country and you're learning the customs of the people there, you're observing the mannerisms, that's a Ketu quality, giving the ability to pay attention to these things. Since I've had other experiences with many other cultures, I know how to watch people and observe their mannerisms, even if I'm not learning directly per se. This is what Ketu brings. It's a subtle capacity to know that what you've been, to have faith that what you've been all this time, there's aspects of yourself that are going to be useful even in the future when you are developing on a new language, right? So let's say a strong Rahu person has been to 10 countries but can only speak like 2 languages, but is functional. They found the country that they needed to find in order to start properly developing on the best of their potentials. It's Ketu that can go into these different territories and absorb a deep sense of the what's important in order to relate in every country that you go to. How is yourself? What about yourself can you use in all of these different places? And when you have a good Ketu, you can bring that experience, that understanding, to all of the new experiences and bring more richness out of those experiences. And kind of the last thing I would say is that, like, Saturn, basically, once Rahu is out in strange new territory, Saturn is like, this is okay. In fact, it's a good Saturn that will say, this is making me grow. So while I'm out on the fringes of my usual, I'm out of my element, learning new experiences and just ways of being. And while I'm out here, I know and I feel that I'm deeply, richly gaining the experiences that I need. So I'm going to use all of the networking. I'm going to use the people around me. I'm going to use the material reality. I'm going to use my field, my 10th house, the field that I constantly employ myself through in order to get a hand on something while I am being blasted by the strange unknownness of this necessary Rahu energy, which has said what you've been doing is not working. You need to cough up this crap. It's Saturn that says, okay, I understand. This is an important transformative process and I'm going to ring it through. And I have the resources to ring it through. It's very important. I mean, there's 2 dimensions to every planet. There's like, where is Saturn in the signs? How is the Rashi aspects to Saturn's house? That's going to show, do you have opportunities to use your Saturn? But it's Saturn in Digbala, it's Shadbala, it's Lajatati Avashtas, it's Digbala, which is Shadbala. It's the internal aspect of Saturn that says, when those opportunities do come, I'm going to be ready to use them. I want to use them and bring the most out of this Rahu experience. So I hope that makes sense. It's in the Satya Jatakam that we hear that Rahu it resembles Saturn and Ketu resembles Mars. Now, there's an old debate going on, kind of, sort of, somewhat, sort of. Some people would suggest that, like, if you have positive Rashi aspects to Aquarius, then your Rahu will work better. If you have positive Rashi aspects to Scorpio, then your Ketu will work better. And it kind of makes sense by inference, because if Scorpio is good, it's half of Mars, at least. It's a weird question as to why this doesn't apply to Aries, or why Rahu is not also associated with Capricorn. I'm not, Ryan himself has actually said that he doesn't know, he doesn't have a distinct, clear reference as for where this stuff, the distinct connection as to why this is in the Satya Jatakam and why this is the way it is. It's probably just another weird mathematical phenomenon that so often happens in astrology. It's very common for astrologers when you come to an astrologer and ask about Rahu Ketu and how they function, the astrologer will say, look, tell me about your Saturn, and I'll give you insights into Rahu. And that's the other way with Ketu and Mars. If you ask about Ketu, they'll say, tell me about your Mars, and I'll give you insights about Ketu. Ketu Dasha, the Dashas have their colorations in this way. Ketu Dasha is colored with the tones and maleficness of Mars. So the correlation is definitely there between Mars and Ketu and Saturn and Rahu. As for the correlation of Ketu with Scorpio and Rahu with Aquarius, some people swear by it. It's a part of Rahu and Ketu which our Astrology Apprenticeship program hasn't used in that sense. We haven't found a deep enough scriptural evidence to firmly suggest that that is worth exploring and really, or it's worth exploring, but we have not configured it as a confirmed part of tropical Vedic astrology. The temperament of Rahu and Ketu, I believe, are both Temasek, which basically means that Rahu actually, even though it invokes the inspiration of the sun, it invokes the inspiration of the sun by forcing you to face the fact that time is going by and you are not expressing your sun to the fullest because you've been busy filling your lungs full of cigarette and tar resin matter, right? So when you have a cough attack and you're like, oh my God, I gotta stop this, it's not exactly inspiring. Or if you like have a heart attack, or if you have a lung attack, or like if you have an opportunity, sometimes it's actually an opportunity that can be like tough. It's a necessary, it's like, you know, becoming a celebrity where you've got to go on stage, you know. For anybody who's a performer, going on stage could be the joy of your life because it's the sun. The sun is such a performer. Leo is a performer. But, I mean, maybe the sun will bring you on stage. You know, if you have a strong sun in your chart, you're bound for that. Or different things, Jupiter as well. I digress. The point of the metaphor here is that you getting on stage and being inspired to act and speak and all these things, that's your sun coming through. But the fact that, what got you on stage? Is it the fact that you lost all your money? You didn't have, you know, maybe Rahu is at a certain point where either it's a monetary thing where I don't have enough money. I need to be an actor and find some job. So I'm just going to go out and act on stage and hopefully it'll work out for me. Rahu is the push to get there, and it's Temasek. That kind of push would be kind of like, Rahu's push here would be more like you've been working at a grocery store for 15 years, writing your little, thinking that you could be a star, writing little books and things. And there could be one day where your nerves snap, where your boss, where you accidentally, you come into work and you're like just having a hard time, you're not living with your purpose, you accidentally drop a can of Red Bull or some kind of soda on the floor because you're just so nervous, and your employer looks at you and says, well, you better clean that up before you start work. And then you say, you know what, I quit. It's Rahu that's being pushed like a splinter into this, you know what? I have to live for my inspiration. I quit. Now, that's not exactly inspiring. This is why we say that Rahu is Temasek, meaning there's Rahu being Temasek, he takes action simply to fix a problem when there is one, not out of his inspiration or to improve things per se, but because there's a problem that is reached a critical breaking point and needs to be addressed and corrected. It's why these Rahu and Ketu are tied to our evolution of the soul in a more emphatic way. All the planets are related to our evolution, but Rahu and Ketu are a focal point for these karmas. They show where things have been imbalanced in our being on average in theoretical past lifetimes. It's a problem, a Temasek thing. It's like this underbelly, this under-ebbing venom wave that has been developing in algae that's just like spider webs that are collecting behind you. It's not out of inspiration. It's not an egotistical idea to do better. It's a Temasek thing. It's a necessary imbalance correction. So they give the nature of the Lord of the sign, as well as any planets that are joined them. And we have to consider the Navamsha as well. The Navamsha is the chart, the D9, the Varga, if you've ever heard of them. If you really want to know what your Rahu and Ketu are all about. The Navamsha is the chart that deals with our ability to derive a sense of purpose and meaning from the path in our life. So if Rahu and Ketu are situated well in the birth chart, but if they have a problem in the D9 chart, that shows someone who consistently has difficulty finding a sense of purpose when it comes to attending their spiritual evolution through their activity in this role in life. So you could have the opportunity to express Rahu and Ketu well, might be there, but are you really going to be that deeply inspired to it? Or are you going to feel like it's a huge part of what you are? Look to the Lord of Rahu in the Navamsha, where it is in the Navamsha, and also where it is in the Rashi chart. Same thing with Ketu. When the nodes are joined with benefics, they yield good results. When they're joined with malefics, they yield bad results. They're simply flowing through the bodies that are available to them. Rahu is the expanding army of consciousness. Ketu is the conquered territory and flag. The Sanskrit word Ketu actually means flag. It's important. Ketu is the army that protects the fort, that protects the castle, the land that's been conquered. So, I got two little things that I have to say here to add my own little shtick to this conversation. One of them is an old Japanese proverb that I heard today that I'd like to share. It says, "You can't cross the ocean without being willing to lose sight of the shore." And ironically, you may not understand this, but Ketu is the one who will allow you to lose sight of the shore. Ernst Wilhelm does a really good Rahu and Ketu video that I highly recommend. But he basically says there that Ketu is the stronghold. It's a castle. And if your stronghold, if your basic energy upkeep, if you don't have your cigarettes or whatever it is that gets you along in life, then you're always going to be thinking that you don't have an internal sense of a platform, an identity that can hold itself and keep sustaining itself, some identity, while you go into the unknown, which Rahu enforces through its tough, dire needs and reality. It's like if you go out to the beach and you want to go out and have fun on the beach, so you got to lock your van. You get 3 minutes away from your van and you start thinking, did I lock the van? I'm sure that I did. I better go check. Take another 3 minutes. You go, okay, lock. Click, honk, honk. Yep, sounds like it's locked to me. All right, so I've got it. I got this. I don't need to worry about it anymore. You walk another 5 minutes and you start thinking, did I lock that van? I mean, I know I did. I heard the thing, but like, should I really let that go? If you don't have a good Ketu, if you don't have a constant, especially in your youth, a good Ketu means that everything that you are when you're younger is a part of what you are when you're older. And that's what allows you, when you're older, to look back and you see the shore and you're like, it's okay. I know that everything I've done so far is building on something that is going to be useful to me. Everything happens for a reason. I'm now ready because I had a good Ketu life. I can let go of what I've been in order to move forward, because I will bring a bit of it with me. It's almost like the only way, if you're a good explorer, Rahu might force you to like cross the ocean or whatever, and you'll really deal with it in a hard way. But it's the person who takes Rahu on themselves and crosses that ocean. The reason they do is because they have some kind of cultural identity. They've got a family, they've got a loved one, they've got a sense of self, a skill that they love, a passion that they know they can't find here, but it is them. That's what lets you know, not only am I going to look back at that shore, I am going to be happy to see it go, because my home is always with me. What I am and what I've built on is not to waste, and it's always with me wherever I'm going to go. This is a good Ketu that adapts to fit whatever new world Rahu forces the person into. A great metaphor for this is Peter Pan. Jordan Peterson does a cool little video on the Peter Pan myth. Peter Pan was a young boy who wanted to stay a child forever. Like, he wanted to stay in Ketu consciousness forever. And it's almost like he didn't want... He had a bad Ketu, which means he didn't feel... He feels like if he goes to be an adult, he's going to lose what his childlike nature. He's going to lose what he's built on. So that's why he sees Captain Hook. Captain Hook is an adult and is this mean adult. And Captain Hook is almost always getting eaten by the crocodile. Saturn. Right? Incredible. The dragon that holds the clutches of time in its scraggly little claws. It's the crocodile. This crocodile is always trying to eat Captain Hook. And Captain Hook sees that. He's like, I don't want to deal with that. Captain Hook, the adult, the proper lived adult life, says, I don't want to deal with this crocodile that keeps trying to eat me. And Peter Pan sees, I don't want to be like Cat. Look at this adult who is always worried about time. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my childhood if I face Captain Hook. I'm going to lose my childhood if I get away from my childhood. I'm afraid of that, and I'm afraid to lose this. That's a bad Rahu and a bad Ketu. A good Ketu will say, this childhood was good, and I feel like it was definitely a proper thing, and I know that I'll be able to bring a piece of what I've been all this time with me wherever I go. Now, that's the good Ketu. It'll be willing to be warm where it is, and to feel childhood, and to feel like it's sustained, like it's having fun with all its little, the Lost Boys, the little raccoon guys that hang out with Peter Pan, because they all don't want to grow up either, but they're kind of like bums. They're like homeless bum kids, right? Because none of them want to grow up. Peter Pan can take all that energy, even that wily human awareness that Ketu can bring when it's very good. It can understand low-caste people and ill, venomous consciousness, see it all, deal with it all, while still holding on to what it's been and what it's going into. And Rahu is the world of Captain Hook, and a good Peter Pan with a good Rahu will face Captain Hook confidently, deal with the adult world, while still keeping the fun youthfulness of Ketu, if they've got the good Ketu again. But even if they've got an ill Ketu, Captain Hook will force... If you have a good Rahu, Captain Hook will come to you, and you will feel like you need to deal with the adult reality. Like, even though you feel like you might lose a bit of yourself, it's okay, because you are willing to, just for the sake of the fact that you hate spitting up the cigarette resin in this tar, and you hate getting tormented by Captain Hook, you say, all right, enough's enough, I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to go be an adult. And you might not be the best at it. You might not be the happiest if you don't have a good Ketu. But at least you will be probably having some shimmering awakening of your sun inspiration and of what inspires you at the same time. So that was a fun metaphor to kind of break down there. I'm basically at an hour now, so I think I'm going to leave that here. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock a Campfire. It's my little spiel on Rahu and Ketu. I would love to hear what you guys think of it, so feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And keep your eyes peeled, because coming from this series is the next video in the series. I'm going to be talking about a little metaphor that I've made, like I said, for Rahu, Ketu, Rahu and Saturn on one hand, and Mars and Ketu on the other hand, as this movie production team. I hope you guys enjoy it. That'll be in the next video. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more fun astrology videos.